This is the Biz of Wealth. Challenges, rumblings, and evolution of the wealth management industry.
Welcome to Business of Wealth. Today I'm with Scott Carson, who's the notes guy from Austin. And I'll just, welcome, first of all. Thank you for being here.
Honored to be here. We're going to have a good time.
Exactly. That's the idea. So first, give me your, elevator pitch and who you are.
Well, we talked about that beforehand.
Yeah,
I don't know if I
just before hitting record. I know.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's okay. So for the last 20 years, I've been an entrepreneur for the most part, focused as a real estate investor, but primarily focused for the last 14 years now on buying and investing in distressed debt. And people would often wonder why you would want to buy a non-performing note. And I say everybody's in the note game already. Just most people are on the wrong side of the payment streams. If you get a mortgage,
so
explain that.
About that. Yeah. What do you mean everybody's in the notes game?
So if you got a mortgage or a house, a mortgage or a house, a car payment, credit card debt, student loan debt, IOU, whatever it might be, you're in the note game. You're just on the wrong side of the payment stream. You're paying out versus paying in. Okay. And that's why banks are always so big, is that they understand the use of arbitrage, using somebody else's funds, go out, they're borrowing money technically at like 0.1%, but then lending money at anywhere from 3 to 4 to 20% and making that arbitrage between. And that's kind of what I do a little bit in the note business, except what I do is I'm buying bad debt where somebody hasn't made a mortgage payment in anywhere from six months to 6 years. And we're buying that debt from lenders, private institutions at usually a substantial discount because it's somebody's not paying. And we make our money, Alejandro, by basically becoming the bank, then reaching back out to the bar and say, hey, pay, stay. We got to work something out here. Do you want to stay? Let's set up a modification agreement or payment plan and get you back on track. So how we make our money is buying the debt at a big discount, either getting the bars back on track for payments. They bring a little bit of money to the table to get back on track. Or if they won't play ball with us, they'll tell us to go pound sand. Then we have the same rights as the bank to go in and start the foreclosure process and either take the property back or sell the property at auction, because we're buying the debt at such a big discount below, usually somewhere around 50 to 60 cents on the dollar of value, or even less in some cases. So we've got a lot of our own technically equity that we can play with. Does that make sense?
The people that are, that you're getting the debt from, they don't want to do the foreclosure process. Are banks not doing that anymore? What is it?
That's a really great question. Everybody asked me that. Why wouldn't a bank just go ahead and foreclose? And there's a variety of reasons that banks will sell debt off of their books. One, they just, like we've ran into the last 2 years where they couldn't foreclose and they've tired of holding on to this note for a period of time. So they'll sell the debt to me that I make my money by, fixing that problem child. Or in some cases, especially in maybe a smaller bank, they actually know their clients and they don't want to be the bad guy foreclosing. So they rather, get something in it that they can go in arbitrage and go out and make money back on and let me be the bad guy. Or we buy out from a lot of investors or, real estate investment trusts that wanted just performing paper, and people have started non-paying. So they'd rather sell that non-performing paper off versus have to go through a 30-day foreclosure in Texas, or maybe a 9 to 12-month foreclosure process down in Florida. Instead of having to do that, they'd rather sell it to me and move on.
So you mentioned something that is interesting and a good segue into what I wanted to talk to you about. Basically the banks are saying, they know them. It's a branding issue. You don't want to look bad in front of your client. So you're just going to sell the debt. And I see that you do have a very strong focus on marketing and, on growing influence, you call it. So tell me a little bit about how you built the business and why you have this focus.
So I'm so glad you brought that up. I think we dominate in our niche. Note investing, people don't really know a lot about, but it's definitely a smaller niche within the bigger world of real estate investing. And for, I'll say the last 11 years, we've really relied on our marketing to help us get aboard. There's a lot of, I won't say gray hairs, but note investing, most people that are teaching note investing or been in the note business have been around for 20, 30 years. They don't understand the power of social media marketing. And I was very fortunate back when I first got started as kind of a real estate investor the right way. I had basically 4-year apprenticeship with some folks that taught me not only owner financing, creative financing, debt, and real estate, but it also taught me marketing. One of the founders, or not want to say the founders, one of the big folks over at Traffic and Conversion Summit or digitalmarketer.com, Roland Frazier. I got to spend basically 4 years working with him and picking his brain in marketing. And when everything hit the fan in 2008 in the mortgage markets, I relied upon that marketing aspect to really kind of set me apart. People didn't understand business. So I used video and blogs and conference calls out to people that were interested in learning more to just share what note investing is. So I started teaching back in 2010 about note investing to give people an opportunity to understand that it's not like buying a property or buying a rental. It's a different process. There's a lot of things into it. And so we've just leveraged and doubled down on the marketing aspect. That's why we've got the Note Closer Show podcast, with over 1.2 million downloads. We've doing videos every week. It's just, I think it's one of the most important things because besides everybody being in the note business these days, if you're an entrepreneur, a business owner, I don't care if you're selling tires or property or social media services, you've got to realize and embrace the fact that we're all a media first kind of market. You've really got to embrace that marketing side, because if you're not going to market your business, somebody else is going to market theirs. And it doesn't have, and we're so blessed that marketing, video and stuff like that is so much easier to do these days than what it used to be, even just 10 years ago. You think about YouTube being around, 11, 12 years, it was kind of new back then, and all the things that pop up. And if you've got a smartphone, as long as it's not like a flip phone or an old Nokia floating around, you know what I mean? You have the opportunity to really, my iPhone is more intelligent than the computers that they had to land the lunar module, back in Apollo 11, stuff like that. So if you don't want to embrace, that's fine. Just somebody else is going to grab your market share and either grab your investors or grab your deal flow. And our marketing, that's what we've really pushed out there, is when somebody wanted to search for note investing or buying notes or who do I sell a note to? Oftentimes we show up in the search engines organically. I've never paid $1 to Google for ads or anything like that, but that leads to people seeing us, reaching out to us, and embracing it. That's why we've, that's why we kick ass and really dominate our niche, but all through organic content.
Okay, so you mentioned two things that I'm interested in. First, you said you started by teaching. That's something I talk to my clients all the time. Just share your knowledge, teach, and it will come. Most of the time, they don't have the patience to build it, right? They're like, I'm just dedicating all this time, and I get like 10 views. Yeah, but you may get the right 10 views that you need.
Yes.
So how did you start that? Why did you think about teaching, and how did you manage your time as an entrepreneur too?
Really, that's a really great question. I think if you're a digital entrepreneur, you probably are all familiar with a guy out of New York called Gary Vaynerchuk, right? Jab, 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 right hook. Big New York Jets fan, kind of a salty, vinegary personality, but we all love him, right? And Gary said something, and then I also will throw it back to Kevin Harrington, one of the Sharks. I saw him speak in Vegas years ago. And they talked about you're not going to go organic. Your content, your video is not going to blow up. You're not going to have 1 million downloads, 1 million views. But you have to realize, though, you don't need that. You need one person to watch your video or see your content that makes a difference in their lives. That one person, we're all one person away from something happening. And so I took that as like, these guys are a lot smarter than I am. I don't have to be the smartest guy in the room. I just got to listen to what they say. And so, especially back in, I want to say maybe it was 2015, 2016. And there were several people that said, listen, you got to make video a full-time thing in what you're doing. You've got to be one of your major staples, because that's where everything is going. And obviously, look now, 5-6 years later, every platform has some sort of video component. So I flew back home from Vegas. I remember sitting down with my staff and said, listen, we're going to do videos every day. We're going to do something. We're just going to do this new thing called Facebook Live had come out. And I said, and I'd always taken a marketing first approach. Like the first hour of every day when I walk in the office or wake up, it's about marketing. I don't check emails. I'm not worried about my text messages. That hour is dedicated to either recording a podcast episode like we're doing today, sending an email blast out to our market, or uploading a video that we've recorded to get out. Or I'm doing my own podcast episode that we're recording. And we do that on a day. So when I first started, I did 150 days, business days, 30 weeks basically of Facebook Lives.
Oh,
And
wow.
I would just share what's going on. It was kind of to be a fly on the wall. What are we working on today? And these videos would be anywhere from 8 minutes to 80 minutes in some cases if we had a good guest or a good topic. And that really built a following. I mean, now the algorithms are different now than they were, 6 years ago. But over those 150 days, we had over 170,000 views on those videos. Now, Facebook videos don't really last that long. They get buried like everything else, kind of like your Twitter feed does. But I still look at it like, wow, that's a good audience. Well, then that's when we launched the podcast. I said, heck, we're just doing the Facebook Live videos. Let's make a podcast out of this now. Because we had built our tribe, built a following. Mm-hmm. And then we leveraged that with our email database and YouTube. And that's kind of what we did. We take one piece of content, one video, and we share it in 7 or 8 spots. So it doesn't take as long as most people think about.
Exactly.
I know your student, I'm sure your folks, your clients, stuff like that, think, oh, this is going to take 12 hours to create 12 pieces of content. No, it takes you hitting that record button. And if you want to edit and share it other places, great. If you want to do a little bit more fancy editing, there's ways to outsource that through services or third-party vendors to make that happen. And that's what we do. We just hit record and then ship it out to our third-party vendor who edits it and throws it up on it, throws it back to us, or they write a blog and share that on our website or upload the podcast. And it's just an organic, it's like a net. Now we dominate the first 2 pages of Google, which is really all that you want to be, all through just sharing on a repeat basis. And if you're going to end up doing the work or you're answering questions on a million times, you might as well record a video, make an episode about that question.
Yeah.
So that's easier for people to watch and binge your content.
And another aspect that you mentioned that I'm very interested in, that I discuss a lot, is the niche building and the niche definition. How do you find a niche? Did you find it, and how did you define it?
So that's a really good question, because I think as they say, the riches are in the niches, right? We've all heard that slogan a couple of times, but you have to look at what's out there. If you're doing the same thing that everybody else does, isn't going to get you rich. You're listening to the Biz of Wealth podcast. Okay, come on. All right, you have to, if you want to be wealthy. That doesn't mean go out and make another hamburger just like McDonald's. That doesn't make sense. You got to find something that people need, something that you have a unique strength in. I think also really helps if you've got a strength in something and if you're very passionate about it, or that's going to help you. But trying to be a jack of all trades equals to a master of none. So you've got to find something that's being underserved. And that's what I found, back 14 years ago, is the note business was around, but most people didn't know about it. There's like 1 or 2 people. I said, well, there's nobody teaching this one niche of note investing, the distressed side. Let me start teaching about that. Let me start sharing about this. And it also helped that the market kind of took a big, downturn in 2008 where people were more interested. So that's one thing. Look at what's going on in the market. Look what's not being served. There's a niche or a segment or a population that's not being served. Capitalize on that. Look at that, and then don't be afraid. Embrace different ways to get the word out. One thing that really helped us too is that we were in this niche, but we also were not afraid to reach out to our competitors or our peers. And we started doing an online summit back 6 years ago where we invited our competition to be on the summit with us for 3.5 days. And it was really fun. It's like, what? You want me to speak to your audience? Like, yeah, just share it to your audience. So we did that with the whole idea that they weren't going to share it. They're probably not going to share our event, but they did, or we shared the heck out of it in social media. So it just happened, a lot of crossover audience. And that really resulted in a lot more market share. People like, oh, I like what he's sharing. Oh, that's nice. And it led to the people that were our biggest competitors who said no. We're like, oh, we need to start doing that. Right. And so and that's the thing. When you start seeing people, I won't say stealing your stuff or replicating your stuff. That's the purest form of flattery when they'll start replicating what you do. But find your niche, find a target audience that's not being served or something. I mean, don't be generic. That's the problem, especially in real estate a lot of times these days, that so many people are trying to be a generic real estate show. Well, there's a million generic entrepreneur podcasts, generic real estate. Find one niche and focus on it, and it'll make it easier, but go deep on that niche and dominate that niche. And you'll be happier because you're not being distracted with other things, and your audience will look at to you as being either the guy or gal who's the expert in that one field. And that's what you want.
Okay. So, but your niche was defined by your product, not by your audience.
Well, it was defined by the market. It was defined by what's going on in the market more so, because I was doing fix and flips and wholesale. I wasn't really doing a lot of stuff. But when the market went south, I got out of the mortgage business. I got out of the fix and flip business. So let's just focus. Here's an opportunity to buy distressed debt, because it something that we hadn't seen in 20 years since the 80s. I said, okay, let me do that. And then I started seeing there's not a lot of education out there for what I'm doing. Let me start sharing what I'm doing. And the audience came over like, oh, this is awesome. This is interesting. We want to find more about it. And that's what helped us dominate our niche.
That's interesting, because whenever I think of a niche, I think of a product, but I also think of an audience. You found the product first, the audience later. Who came?
I would probably say the product first, as far as our niche. We started seeing stuff coming from banks. And so I started sharing it, our content, as a way to not only find more deals, but to raise capital. Because people are like, oh, this is great, but I don't know what the heck you're talking about. I like what I'm seeing return-wise, or what you're seeing as far as deals, but I don't understand what you're talking about. So it was actually kind of funny. I was in Orlando. I was in Orlando. I had an event, a real estate summit. Somebody asked me to come in, and somebody made a comment about distressed debt. And everybody that all the speakers like, oh, we don't know. I said, well, I know about it. I've bought about it. So they brought me up on stage at a lunch break. Okay. Oh, wow. And I had like 30 minutes, and it was like, they were like, just, here, this group, go get your sandwiches, go get your bucks. And I'm sitting there just talking for 30 minutes about note investing and kind of the basic concepts. And I get off the stage, and I just got bombarded with like 50 people. And we're like, 50 people are like, hey, do you teach a course? I'm like, yeah. I hadn't even, what do you charge? $250 for a 3-day class. Like, okay, give me your card. I was like, I don't have the link here. They didn't want me to pitch it. That whole like, just flying by the seat of my pants. So I collected everybody's business cards. I went home, went up my hotel room and said, okay, let's figure this out. Jumped online and figured out how to set up a link and a 1-page landing page. And I sent an email out to the 50 people, and 20 people signed up for the class. I was like, okay, that was pretty easy. Now I got to put the class together. You know what I mean? But people asked, do you have something? And, instead of me creating a class that I thought they would want, people literally told me what they wanted. And that's what I created. That helps too, when your audience tells you what you want. But the biggest thing I could tell you is don't be afraid to share stuff. I'd never taught a class before, never, taught a workshop. I mean, I've been around them and attended them, but I never taught anything like that before. And I was like, okay, here's an opportunity. Can't be too hard, and so I'll just share what I learned and ask some questions. And, what are the 3 biggest things you want to learn from this? And people would tell me, I'm like, okay, so I'll create a segment on exactly what they want to learn.
Right.
And deliver it from there. And then I always ask afterwards, hey, what's one topic that we didn't cover that you would like for me to spend more time on? And so that gave me kind of the rest of the list to develop the class and going from there. Now, looking back now, I've been teaching note investing for 12 years. I was the educator of the year in 2014 and a runner-up in 2016 in my industry. And it's fun. I enjoy it because the market's always changing. And I think it's one big thing. If you're going to teach something, you got to be in that niche or doing it on a regular basis. There's too many people that are teaching something they haven't done for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and their content's out. So you always got to be in the thick of the things, rolling up your sleeves and getting dirty with it as well.
But as a marketing strategy, then, you teach them. How many of them convert into investors for you?
Wow. That's a good question. I think I always make the running joke that 5% of people do anything. You know what I mean?
What do you mean?
So like if you teach a class of 100 people, there's literally maybe 10% will actually take action on doing something.
Oh, okay.
5 if you're lucky, 10 if you're really lucky. And the way that we kind of figured this out is when I would teach a class, when I was doing a hotel class, we would give the registration list to people that came. So listen, instead of you running around trying to exchange cards, we're going to give you the registration list so that you can follow up with people afterwards. Yes, if you don't want to be on the list, let me know. We'll remove your name, stuff like that. And we would always see within 48 hours, we knew who the successful students were going to be, because the successful students would realize the opportunity, send an email out to the entire database within 24 to 48 hours. And we would go back, 30 days, 90 days later and talk with people. Hey, are you still doing stuff? And some people are doing stuff, but what happens is people get bogged down trying to chase too many squirrels. So they're not successful and just focus on one. The ones that focus on just one thing and went with it were very successful. Or they were either buying deals for themselves, or they said, I don't want to do deals myself. I'll just write you a check. So we would see about somewhere around 20 to 25% conversion of people wanting to invest with us versus just going out and do it themselves. And then it all comes down to, okay, are they sophisticated? Are they accredited? Can we, do they have funds that we really put to work? Or are they just like, hey, I got $1,000? Well, that's too little to do anything with. So it's all about kind of walking that step through people. But that's part of the reason we have all the videos too, and the content out there is we get phone calls all the time from people like, hey, I've been binge watching your videos or listening to your podcast. I like what you're doing. I want to either A, sign up for a class with you in education, or B, can we talk about potentially investing with you? And, that's always the amazing thing. I'm a big believer that every download that we get is worth somewhere around $1,000, some sort of fashion. And by looking at our numbers over the last few years, that's about accurate. Every download we get is worth somewhere $1,000. Either people sign up for something or people invest in some sort of fashion. That's
super interesting. So when in all this time, what question do you wish you were asked more often about business, about investing in notes? Or
we live in such a fast-paced society, and you mentioned it earlier. People don't have patience these days. You know what I mean? And I wish people and everybody's all likes to gloss over or filter success. Oh, it looks like everybody's having a great time. I would wish people would ask more about what's your biggest mistake or what's your biggest hurdle that you've overcome along the way. Because everybody thinks about the fact that, hey, you've been around for a while, you've won these awards, you closed on these many deals. They don't see the amount of deals that we've made offers on, that we canceled on, or the deals that didn't close properly that we had to either fix. And that's in real estate. You're always going to have good deals and you're going to have deals that go south that you got to figure out a way to do that. So, we're like anybody. We like making lemonade out of lemons and figuring it out. And I think that's one of the most important thing is looking at how when things turn south on you. Like, I'll give you a great example, Alejandro. When the foreclosure moratorium hit 2 years ago, we couldn't foreclose, we couldn't evict, and that's one of our biggest exit strategies. So we had to get creative for the last 2 years of working with the borrowers, either providing loan modifications or forbearance agreements, or some people just didn't want to pay at all, and we had to figure out ways to get around that. So that's the biggest thing is people ask how you fail. Well, you just don't take action. That's the number one thing. Don't take action. You're guaranteed failure. Right. But if you do take action, you do implement things and are coachable, you can find success, especially if you got a coach or somebody out there help guide you along the way. And that's one of the most important things is I've had great coaches over my life. I still have coaches to this day in business and marketing and finance, stuff like that too, that you never stop learning. And as the market changes, you've got to be willing to change, or as one of the most overused terms the last 2 years, pivot into something new for you. You know what I mean?
So what do you do when you get stuck? Because, as an entrepreneur, sometimes we get stuck, you get drained and you're like, okay, I don't even know where to go. What do you do? How do you start over, or how do you hit refresh?
That's a really good question, because I think so many people are struggling with that. I've struggled with that. I'm not gonna lie. We love to travel. It's one of the biggest things that we do to recharge is go out and, we're going to have to talk some travel stories. I see you getting all fired up over there.
I love traveling.
And we haven't traveled much. I mean, besides going down to see my mom or going to Orlando.
Traveling is a pain. It's stressful now.
It is totally stressful. Yeah, exactly.
Stressful.
Yeah, so that was the biggest thing. So one of the things I had to find an alternative way. And one of the things that we've done a lot is actually, dive into, since we're not traveling much, is spend more time here at the house. And we've turned our backyard from basically a barren landscape into a tropical forest for the most part. Nice. That's nice. But you have to recharge. You have to unplug. I mean, people these days, the social media is good, but it's also it's the evil empire. So turning things off, centering yourself. I think one of the best things that I've done is that I try to start each day, besides the marketing mindset, like we talked about in media business, is I get up in the morning, I get coffee, I go sit outside, and I relax for 10 minutes. Before I do anything else, I may be jamming to Tony Robbins in my head, or Mark Victor Hansen, or just soothing, chanting monks, Tibetan monks in my head for 10 minutes.
Good.
But it's a good
way. Well, that's the secret that everybody talks about. So
the meditation's not good. I mean, with gyms shutting down, I need to get back in the gym for sure. But that's always been helpful. Before that, I was, I had my trainer that came to my office every day, and we would work out for an hour every day. And that was a very mindful thing that helped unplug from life and work. It's stressful out there. I think you got to unplug from media. Turn the TV off. We got rid of cable a couple of years ago. That was a big helpful thing. And limit your negative news intake is one of the most important things you can do.
Yeah, but that's a day to day. Sometimes I find that in our businesses, once you go into a success phase, sometimes you just, sort of stay there for a little bit, and you're managing the day to day, you start to relax, and you're really not innovating, not provoking new things. So that type of stuck, I think sometimes it's harder to get, unstuck from that once you're like sort of comfortable.
Michael Gerber talks about that in the E-Myth religiously, how we as entrepreneurs, we wear basically three hats. And it's the innovation is what usually drives us as entrepreneurs, but then you've got to go back in and the customer service or the research and development, new things that we as entrepreneurs, when we're not doing something that we love, it drains us versus being active. And you're right. You hit success. Most people do hit that plateau stage like, I can take a deep breath now. Everybody goes through that. You just got to realize it's peaks and plateaus, but you've got to grow. If you want to go from making 50 grand a year to 100 grand, you got to get your mind right for that 100 grand a year. If you want to go from making 6 figures to 7 figures, you've got to grow. And that means a lot of times maybe leaving people behind that aren't going to grow with you, staff members, friends. You've got to surround yourself with like-minded people. And I think that's one of the most important things is finding somebody, a mentor that you can reach out to. Hey, I've hit this spot. What's next? What should I do next? And you always got to be innovating, figuring out what's coming down the pipeline. Because once you start getting stagnant, your competition, they're going to see what you're doing and trying to either beat you up in some sort of fashion or copy what you're doing. And then, as we like to say, either say they're better or reduce on price in a lot of cases. And that happens. You just got to keep innovating and being fresh and doing what others aren't doing. You'll be surprised at where that'll lead. But I just think the biggest thing is don't surround yourself with yes men and yes women, where you've got to have somebody who's gonna be the devil's advocate. Hey, you need to do this. This is great, but what's next? What are we doing next? Because that's keeping fresh and will keep people excited to work with you or keep your team motivated as well.
So we're hitting the end here. I wanted to just talk about, I wanted to give me one place I need to go to, since we spoke about travel stories. Where do I need to go?
Okay, first of all, to do that, I have to ask you, what's your favorite place you've been to?
Well, my favorite place, I didn't do that. Italy. That was one of my favorite.
Now, let's be more specific in Italy. Are we talking like the Capri, Sorrento coast? Are we talking?
The issue with traveling is that it really depends. It's not all about the place that you go to. Is when you went and who you went with and at what stage in your life. For me, I went to Italy when I was young, backpacking through Europe, and I went to the south, and it was amazing. Mm-hmm. Then I went back with my daughter and my husband when she was little, and I went to the north. And that's the trip that I remember most fondly. For example, I went to Greece and I loved Greece, but it was a really bad time in my life. So I'm like, I don't have that much of a fond memory. So for me, it's a combination of both when you talk about traveling.
So I get that. I love Italy. And same thing. I traveled first to Europe a year after I was divorced with a couple buddies of mine. And then I went back to England and Spain with my significant other, Stephanie, and we've enjoyed that and usually try to travel to the Caribbean at least once a year or to Europe in some sort of fashion, the other trip of the year. I will tell you this, if you like that, I'm a huge fan of Spain. I love Italy. Don't be wrong. Naples, everywhere, the food, the people, just the history of it is great. But honestly, Barcelona is one of my favorite cities. Madrid's also beautiful. We'll take, there's like a couple cruises that you can take, like Norwegian or Disney, especially if you got a young a daughter. A Disney cruise is actually pretty nice to go to. It's a little less stressful. But it was a transatlantic cruise out of Miami, if I remember correctly.
Oh wow!
7 days on the ship. You lose an hour each day. But it was fun. It's a ship. It was fun. We had cruises.
I would never do that. Oh my God, that's claustrophobic.
It's actually not. It's actually, because I thought that way as well too. But it's actually really nice. But then we hit Portugal, and we hit like 5 or 6 stops around Spain and Portugal before getting dropped off in Barcelona. And then we jumped on another cruise ship that went down the Italian coast. But that's a thing. I mean, Prague is a beautiful city as well. Have you been to Prague, Alejandra?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have a lot of similarities. The Caribbean, floating in the middle of the Caribbean is always one of my favorite things to do on a catamaran.
Yeah.
It's really favorite things. People will go snorkeling.
I lost my respect for the beach, living in Miami, but yeah.
well, I get that. But if you get a chance to, here's a place. If you get a chance to, you ever heard of Nevis, St. Kitts? Go to the Four Seasons in St. Kitts. It is a beautiful resort, a beautiful beach. The people are great. The food is beautiful. It's an amazing place to go to. It's just picturesque. It's quiet, plenty of stuff to do. But the Four Seasons in St. Kitts resorts, it's probably, it's when we think about the iconic, that's the thing that always makes our top 2 or 3 lists here, besides Europe.
It's been such a pleasure, Scott. Thank you so much for being here. I find your business to be an inspiration for everything that I want business in finance to be, and I really appreciate it that you came on.
I'm so honored to have you, and I just want to give a big shout out to all the listeners out there. If you're listening to this right now, do Alejandra a big favor. She kicks ass and takes names. The Business of Wealth podcast. So we as podcasters, we love to hear from our listeners. So go on, hit the subscribe button, and then hit that 5-star review and tell Alejandra how amazing she is. The amazing Alejandra. We'd love to see it. It just takes a few minutes, but it means so much to us as podcasters. So go do that right now. If you're watching this, hey, leave a comment below as well too for it. But Alejandra, so honored to be here. If I can help your audience in any way, feel free to reach out to me.
Same here. Take care.